welcome to another episode of Shooting
The Shit with Rachael
and Neal Young. So we're talking all things real estate photography business growth, mindset, and getting it done. Here come your favorite true entrepreneurs, Rachael and Neal Young, shooting the shit.
I have a ferret on the podcast. Like if we're kind of in a slump, like what kind of things do you do?
Talking about a boob light.
Straddling a power line.
Nice photo.
Ooh, I need that.
I'm like red right now because I'm embarrassed. I go like this. I love it.
Come in.
Sure, use your podcast voice.
You know, over here, I'm pitting out.
Drone's like flipping to the ground.
That's a great callback.
Chit-chatting.
Is that what you call that?
Hey, welcome to another episode of Shooting
The Shit with Rachael
and Neal Young. So today we're talking a little bit about outsourcing your work, whether you should do it, whether you shouldn't, some of the problems, some of the good things. Here we go.
Let's first talk about why you would outsource your editing. So for you, those of you who do not know, outsourcing is hiring an editor overseas that will edit your photos for you, and you don't have to do any of the editing. You can outsource video editing and photo editing, portrait editing. There's editors for everything. My take on it, it's a time saver. You are a photographer, not an editor. So that's a whole mindset shift thing that I had to come into.
Yeah.
Because at first I felt like I was not a legit photographer if I wasn't actually editing the photos as well. Because I thought, that's part of being a photographer is editing your photos. But in reality, like I am hired because of my creative talent and knowing how to use my equipment and going in and doing a good job, right, of shooting. And then I have a whole team of editors that I've hired that take care of all the editing part, which is something that I should not be spending my time doing just because it takes up too much time. So it's,
And just from
time saver.
it becomes at some point a business thing. It's just a decision. Where are your efforts best placed? And it's probably being out there with your camera instead of up late at night editing, so you aren't doing a good job the next morning because you're exhausted.
Exactly. So it saves you a lot of time. Because if you think about it, if you're shooting 2 houses a day, right, that might take you 4 hours, 5 hours. You come home, each job. I mean, for me, when I was editing, I edited for the first 2 years of my business. It took me 2 to 3 hours to edit each shoot.
Yeah.
So that's an extra, 4 to 6 hours of work on top of just shooting for 4 hours or however long it took, to get there and get home and yada, yada. So
as soon as you started getting 2 or 3 shoots, or you got shoots that were twilight shoots, let's say, and here in the summer, it's not even dark till 8 o'clock. And then you're driving in a half hour home, and you get home and, you do something for a couple minutes, then you got to do your editing. And then you got to get up early for an early shoot at, I don't know, 8, 9 o'clock. It gets exhausting real quick.
And then you come home from that shoot the next day and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't have time to edit the other shoot from yesterday. So now I have 3 on my plate. I remember I got to that point where I was editing like 2 at night. I'd be done editing at like 11:30 and I'd get up at 5 to finish editing my next one. And then I'd go shoot all day. And I was like, oh, this is exhausting. How do people do this? And this was before I had even discovered that there was outsourcing companies out there. Like I had really no idea. It really didn't, I never thought that it was as popular as it was. Like, I think all real estate photography companies that are established and bigger use editors. I don't know very many that have been doing it for the amount of time I've been doing it, like 5.5 going on 6 years, that still edit their own photos, except for one team in this area. And I believe he's still doing his own editing. And I have no idea how he's doing it because I'd be falling over.
Especially
and
if
he
you
does
offer,
high volume. So.
Yeah, if you offer any quantity of photos too as well. Some people, when they do their listings, they do really small numbers of photos, maybe 10 or 20 photos is all they're delivering per home, where I'm doing more like 30, 40, 50 sometimes. So it adds up quick. And then the other thing that got really taxing for me on top of the photo editing, if you're offering multiple services, I was editing videos. So when I had a video that took even longer than the photos, it was just became a big stress. And for me, as soon as that turned into this is stressing me out, that was something I had to identify as something that needed to change. change. You know,
Yes, that's a good indicator that you are doing too much if you're feeling
this
super
is
stressed.
making me unhappy, and
Yeah,
then something should change. Yeah.
I can't see myself doing this for very
Yeah.
long
How
because
long can I
I never have.
survive like this? That
Yeah.
needs to change. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So another thing too with outsourcing and a reason why you should is quick turnaround for your clients. So it's a customer service thing, right? So we are
Mhm.
the last step in before they list the house. So they want those photos like tomorrow or today. I mean, I have a lot of clients who ask, "Can you do same day delivery?" I'm like, "No, not probably not. You won't get them till 11 o'clock, and I go to bed at 10. No, but it definitely is a customer service perk to
Yep.
deliver your photos quickly the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was part of the pressure for me too. At the time I think I was saying 2 days, but I was still usually getting it to him the morning before I left for my next day. So that
Wow,
it
good for
became a
you.
little bit of an expectation for some of my clients. They loved it, and then it was
Mhm.
something that was becoming harder and harder to maintain, and I didn't want to lose their excitement about that. Now I don't s- I s- I s- I the other thing here is to you should also make sure you don't kill yourself with setting the wrong expectation too. So I've kind of pulled that back a little bit, and I I emphasize that I try to accomplish next day is the goal. Barring something unusual happening, it would be 48 hours, but usually it's next day. And I don't always deliver in the morning anymore because that's become too difficult to maintain for me now that I'm having more and more consistent going out, really early or driving a far amount of time, that it's just too stressful in the morning. So now it's more like an afternoon kind of thing. So I can have somebody else help out with that as well. And that's not it's not an expectation that they need it to go up 7 a.m. They're not even there. It was just because of my own circumstance that I wanted it done, because if I had a full day, I wasn't going to be able to get to it.
Mhm.
So set an expectation that's reasonable. So if it's there that next day, that's a great. I think that's a pretty good goal, and then it gives you the ability to have somebody else help you out with it too. If they just are collecting the files from your editors and sending them out, you could have an assistant, which you have somebody like that, don't you, Rachel?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so I have an admin that does my morning upload. So I met her about a year ago, and before that, it was basically 2 of us full-time last year. I had one other shooter that was kind of part-time. So we'd have anywhere from like 3 to, 10 jobs that we'd have to upload. Mondays and Tuesdays are a busy day. So Wednesday mornings for me were so stressful. I was getting up at 5. I was telling my editor I need these back by 5 a.m.
Mm,
And he was really good about getting them back on time, or at least getting me half of them so I could get started on them. But I was doing 2 to 3 hours before I'd even leave to go shoot. And then I'd shoot all day. I mean,
mm,
I was running myself into the ground. It was like 12 to 17 hours. Some days 17 hours. I'm not kidding. I'd work
yeah.
from 5 until 10 p.m. nonstop. And I'd be sitting there at my computer and my husband would be here and I'd be like, honey, I'm still working. And like I can't stop for at least another hour. I'm like, I'm so exhausted. He's
Yeah.
like, you can do it, babe. You can do it. And I'm like, I can't live like this. Like it got
Mhm.
to the point where I'm like, I have to find someone. So I went on the portrait photographers group, whatever, and found a gal that, could help out. And she already knew Photoshop. So it was pretty easy to train her, because they need some Photoshop skills to upload in the mornings to, you know, crop things and edit
Mm,
some stuff out, like clean up the images a little bit for me. So yeah, she works for me Tuesday through Friday.
mm.
She starts at around 7 a.m. and then she's done by noon at the latest. Our delivery time is by noon the following day.
Oh, okay.
So we usually get our photos back from the editor by like between 6 and 10 a.m. So if it's a late job like twilight and they don't get off to the editor until like midnight or 1 in the morning, sometimes we'll get them back later. But I tell my clients like 95% of the time you'll have your photos back before noon. And, sometimes we have a little mishap and it'll be later, but we'll definitely communicate that to you and let you know when they'll be there so you can know what to expect.
Right.
So, and it always happens on the ones that are rushed. The ones that are like, oh, can I get my photos back
Mm.
right away? And I'm like, yeah, totally. And then I'm like, oh, I have bad news. I don't know. It never fails. Or it's the same client that gets their photos late
Ah,
like 3 times in a row. And I'm like, I think you're just cursed. Like, I don't know why this keeps happening to you. I am
oh my
sorry.
gosh. Isn't
I
it
swear this doesn't happen to a lot of people.
funny
It's
how
very
that
annoying.
happens? I had that
I
in the
know.
same week. An agent I work with all the time, not about photos, but I was late. I don't knock on wood. I don't like to be late. I was late, not by a ton, but 5-10 minutes, but I hate that. And
Mhm.
twice in the same week for the same agent, I'm like, I don't know what is going on. This is ridiculous. But
Yeah. Oh, that's
anyway,
frustrating.
yeah, yeah.
Anyways, it's the way the universe works or something
Yes,
crazy.
I
So
guess.
yeah.
Yeah.
So another reason to outsource is for quality purposes. So these editors are trained to edit real estate photos. They're
Right.
very good at what they do. Their
Yeah.
window poles look amazing. They desaturate the ceiling so it always looks white. There's very little color cast. If you find a good one, obviously it's we'll talk about that too, how to find a good
Yeah.
editor. And we'll kind of tell you what to look for too, because there's a lot of common mistakes that I've found across the board from all these editors. And,
Mm.
you can tell the good ones from the bad ones by these little mistakes that they make.
Oh,
So we'll
yeah,
touch
yeah.
on that too. But yeah, consistency in your business, and just making
Yeah.
all your images look great. So
Yeah.
it's
And
a
as
big,
you grow, I think, one of the things I think we might have hit on a little bit in some of these podcasts, I'm sure we'll talk about more too, is there are a couple ways you could go with your business. You could stay just one person show business and maybe only book the number of shoots a day that you can handle and just stick with editing all your own photos. But if you're going to go the route where you want to grow and maybe want other shooters, I think that becomes harder and harder trying to do more and more shoots. Then you got more and more work. And then if you want to hire somebody else, now you've got this other variable in the mix. How are they going to edit their photos? Are they going to look the same as the way you edit those? So another part of the
Mhm.
consistency is growing that team. If you're sending it off to that same editors, whether it's a couple editors or a team of editors, a company of editors that all know how you like your photos, you're going to have better consistency for the quality, but also you're going to have consistency for turnaround because these, like you said, they're pros at this, so they're very fast at it too. So
Mhm.
there's a big variation in editors, myself versus some other editor. It might be twice as fast as I am. So there's consistency and timing that they get it back, hopefully by those deadlines that you set for them, that expectation, and there's consistency of the work that it always looks like your work and isn't up and down and all over the place, hopefully. And we'll talk a little
Right.
bit more about managing that a little bit too.
Yeah. So a big thing for me was the mindset of it all. Like I kind of touched on this, but
Mm.
when I originally thought about I had a company come to me and they said they didn't like the way I edited the photos. And they sent me an example from a company that outsources of bad HDR photos that they wanted. And they were like, we want this style. And I'm like, this is
Mm.
really bad HDR. Like, the bad HDR that just
Mhm.
looks way over processed. It was that. And I was like, oh my, you guys, okay. And they were a big client. And I'm like, if I do this editing style for them,
Mm.
that's representing my brand and my work. And I don't
Yeah.
want people to see my work as that. Like, that looks
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So what I did, I ended up doing it. I found an editor and I had them, but I found one that was better than what they had sent me as an example. So I was like, I'm not going to settle for that. But it was
Mm.
I really thought about it long and hard. I'm like, maybe I just tell them I can't do it. It's not my style. I don't want to mess up my reputation and like my style of my editing, whatever. And then I thought, okay, business hat went on and I'm like, Rachel, come on. They're one of your best clients. You'd be an idiot if you didn't do what they asked you to do, and find a better editor, like fix it, make it better than what they're seeing.
Mm.
Right. And find an editor that actually knows what they're doing and edits a lot higher quality. So that's what I did. And it worked. It was a
Yeah, and it
blessing.
works. Yeah, because I would be
Yeah.
on the fence about that too. And I've been there once before where a client wanted the colors changed and all that, and I did it for that one time. And it wasn't that they were wrong, but it was a tricky thing at the time for me going, this is kind of my style that I like, and they didn't like it. And so I fixed it for this one client. But again, I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to get pushed. I don't think people should let themselves get pushed around either and be all over the place.
Mm.
So it's a tricky
Yeah.
battle, I think. Yeah.
But I think any photographer, if you're just starting out, I think it's important that you understand how to edit and you know how to do your own editing. I do know one
Yeah.
photographer who's never edited a photo. He has no idea how to do it. And he has a successful business and he's
Hmm.
run it for years that way. And I'm like, seriously? You don't even know how to edit real estate photos? It's
That's
like, no.
interesting.
And he is the one who made me feel comfortable explaining to my clients, like, he's like, I just am straight up with my clients and let them know I use editors and I'm transparent, and I tell them,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. And they're fine with that. He's like, yeah, they don't care. And I was like,
Yeah.
huh, interesting.
No,
Okay.
and it's a weird place. I'm at that transition place because I only started doing it last summer I used to do all the work myself, and so I'd already been talking to my clients, and they asked me directly, like, could you remove this or could you do that? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that because it was me doing it. I'm still on that. Some of them know I outsource, but some of them don't realize. And I think part of the thing they think is they like that I work so hard on the photos and all that, and I still do. It's
Yeah.
not that you're not a
Yeah.
part of it anymore. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that a lot of photographers are afraid of is like that's part of their art, losing that artistic
Hmm.
input of it. But it's a trade-off, right? You've got business and then you've got your work too, and it's real estate. Not that it isn't there's an art and a craft there, but it's also heavier on the business side than the art side. I feel like there is a
Right.
balance, but we're trying to do photography in a style that's appealing to a broader audience. That's we're
Hmm.
selling a house is what we're doing. So there is a trade-off, but you are still a part of the conversation. It's not, I don't send the photos off and then they go directly to our clients. We are communicating with the editors first, telling them what we want and what we don't want for our photos and how they're edited, because we do care when they don't look like our work. And then when we get them back from them, we're going through them and making sure that they're still holding the bar where it should be for each of these things before they go out. And if they aren't looking that way, we're sending them back and saying, giving them notes and saying, hey, so we still work a lot going, hold on, most of these are great, but this room, these colors aren't right, or this ceiling doesn't look right, or I see a reflection here and that needs to be fixed. And then they fix it and you send it
Yeah.
back again, right? So
Exactly.
it's not that we're
Exactly.
not a part of that creative process anymore. You are, it's just you're more of a manager than the man on the floor, right?
Yeah, and you can kind of teach your editors what your style is and what you like. You kind of critique them and make them better because they're not perfect when you first meet them. You kind of have to train them up on what you like. But yeah, some of the signs that it's time, I think any photographer that sticks with this long enough will start to get referrals. Like my business has been referral based for the most part. I mean, I do social media marketing now and I do a little bit of Google ads now, but for the most part, it's been referral based and you're going to grow. If you stick with it long enough and you love what you're doing and you're providing a good product,
Yeah.
you're going to grow. So it's just a matter of time before you grow out of your editing where you can't physically do it any longer because you just have too much volume. So your choice, it's you're going to be pushed in that direction, or you can hire your own editing team in the States if you can afford it. But you might have to charge those higher premium prices in order to afford the editing in the United States because it can
Right.
be, $5 an image or an hourly wage or something. So you'll pay for it, but if that's what you want to do, that's great. But I think
Yeah.
it's inevitable. If you're going to grow and you're going to get bigger,
Yeah.
you're going to have to figure out something for editing
And
because
then
you are
the next
a
step is
photographer.
too, if you're gonna grow, the next step is they're gonna be where you're at, where you hire other photographers too. That's not even
Hmm.
them manning the camera even, but still you're managing those employees to make sure that you're training them to shoot in a style that you shoot to get the angles that you like.
Exactly.
So it's still gonna be a part of your work and still gonna be something you're proud of, but it's just your roles changes a little bit. But I'm
Exactly.
still a little wary that about saying, yeah, no, I outsource all the photo. But a lot of people know I'm like, oh yeah, I know I had to start outsourcing so I could survive.
Yeah. Instead of saying outsourcing, because it kind of has this like, I
Mm,
don't know, this bad reputation when you say
yep.
outsourcing,
I don't think you're
everyone
right.
wants to keep the work in America. It's like
Oh
outsourcing
yeah.
takes jobs from people in America.
Hmm.
So I say I have a team that edits for me.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Oh, are they overseas?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have 2 or 3 different editors. I have a couple in Vietnam and one in India." And
Hmm.
they're like, "Oh, wow." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's great. It's nice to have a few just in case one can't handle the job or something."
You're right,
So,
and there is that reaction. Even my sister had that reaction when I told her
mhm.
I started outsourcing, and originally was doing it with the Philippines, online jobs PH, and it was just individuals that I hired, and they actually didn't have much experience in real estate, and I trained them from the ground up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work to get them to put out the quality they wanted. But my sister's reaction, I remember, she was like, "Couldn't you? Why wouldn't you just hire American workers?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, there's a couple reasons. One is it's not cost effective for me. these people, I pay a good rate based on their living expenses there. They're actually very happy with the rate they get, and they're doing really well with what I pay them. And it's good for me because I don't lose all of my profit from the shoot, which some of these local ones I wasn't going to make any profit. I was going to make $30 after they edited all the photos I provide.
Exactly.
And the other thing was the turnover, because even at that time, I was trying to get them to next day. The huge
Hmm.
advantage to the overseas, if you can find Filipino workers,
Vietnam,
Vietnam,
India.
India, they are about 12 hours different. So when we're wrapping up our shoots, you get home from your sunset and it's 8 o'clock, it's 8 a.m. there. So they're going to start working on them when you wake up the next day, they've done it already. So even if you
It's a
wanted to do,
beautiful thing. And
yeah,
that's how I sell it to my clients. When I tell them, when they ask,
right.
"Oh, do you use," and some of them are a little snarky. They're like, "Oh, do you use overseas editors?" And I'm like, "I do." And they're fantastic. I say, "The reason is we're on a 12-hour time difference. So when I get home, I upload my
Yeah.
photos, send them to the editor. They work on them all night long. And that's how you get your photos before noon the next day." I'm like, "It's
Yes.
brilliant." And they're like, "Wow." But you have to explain it in a
Mhm.
positive manner, right? To show them the benefits. So I explain, anyone that asks, I give that spiel to everyone just
Yeah.
so they fully understand.
And you
Yeah.
know what? Especially when I worked, I did like when I only use them now, a few of them on occasion from the online jobs people that I hired, just because things changed for the people that I hired originally. Otherwise, I'd still be working with them. They were great, and I really liked them. And there was a more close relationship with that. They really felt
Mm.
like part of my team. It really mattered that they were doing well. We'd have conversations. It was more of a direct connection. I felt like they were employees, and I was proud of that. Actually, I really liked that. They were excited about the work, and I would give them bonuses and stuff, and it was a direct
Nice.
impact on their lives. So I like that. So if you're at a stage where you maybe only need one editor to edit one of your jobs, you've got two, but if they can do one and you can do the other, that's a great place to start.
Mhm. Yeah, or if you have a job that's, it's gonna be hard to edit, like the walls are colored or it's a lot
Mm,
of wood or something, a big view property or something. It's a good place to. I had one house I shot in the beginning days and I found this editor and I was like, this is gonna take me forever. It's a huge
right.
house, colored walls. I'm like, I'm just gonna send it to this guy and see how he does, and he did pretty darn good. I was like, wow, well, that was
Yeah.
easy. And it cost me $35. Score.
Mhm. Yeah, even
Yeah.
last night there was this tricky client that they're all concerned about their colors and everything. I did a couple edits thinking I'm gonna just edit these myself. I did a couple of the edits and I looked at all the files that were left and I said, "Nope, I'm sending it out."
Good for you. Good for you.
And then I just did a little tweak when it came back,
Yeah.
but I wasn't hand blending all these, and because we both do flash ambient blends too, so it's not just a single file that we're tweaking a little bit. There's a fair amount of work goes into each of those files. So
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, honestly, I cannot even edit real estate photos anymore. It's been
yeah.
so long. I mean, I tried one and I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't even remember how I used to
Oh
do
yeah.
this. Like, that's pathetic, Rachel. But I do have an editing team that is now 24 hours. So my problem with these outsourced editors is they go to bed. So when we're up during the day, if my clients have a photo that needs fixed, or let's say 5 photos out of the group didn't get edited, then I would
Uh,
have to wait until they get on, on duty,
Lose a
which is
day.
like
Yeah.
8 p.m. for me. And I'm like, shoot, my client needs this like now. They're live and they want the kitchen photos, right?
Yeah.
So I found an editor that works 24 hours so I can contact them during the day and
Yeah.
they
And
take
that's
care of
the
my changes. It's great.
So I'm just now working with a bigger company. They cost me more. And that's the other thing. Online Jobs PH, because I trained those people from the beginning. Um, it was more affordable. Now I'm paying a dollar an image.
What were you paying them, if you don't mind? Can
It
you
was a different
disclose
structure.
that?
It was a different structure actually altogether.
Okay.
I paid them hourly
Mm.
for the other job, and I gave them a bonus if the job came to me and there was no revisions needed. I gave them a bonus every job they did. And
Oh,
so
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
I
That's
just thought it
cool.
because I was having a lot of revisions and that I had to
Mm-hmm.
tell them this isn't quite right. This and and I didn't want to. I wanted it to be a positive thing.
No,
So
that's a
I
great
was thinking,
incentive
how
for
can I do
them
this
to,
positive? And I thought, hey, what
yeah.
if and I was, they're excited to work hard. And I had a goal for what I thought an appropriate timeline would be for a number of files that were edited. Um, and I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, but I did like the bonus per job if there was no, and I'm still doing that with my video editor. That it's an incentive. Hey, if you don't have to make any changes to this, I'm going to give you a bonus. And the bonus isn't a lot. It was just, you can give them $5 bonus. And that's, for them, that could be another hour of work that they would get paid there because
Mhm.
the hourly is much lower than here. Give them $5 or $10 or something as a bonus. And those add up for the whole week. And it's great for them. They're excited. So,
Yeah, definitely,
but
definitely.
yeah, now it's a
Um,
per image thing. And maybe that makes more sense so that it's hard to judge how because so many people there's big variation in how long it takes you to edit a single photo per
mhm,
editor. So it's kind of hard to
right.
go hourly. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you find good editors, Neil? What are some of your tricks that you've used?
You have more tricks than me on this, but Online Jobs PH, you can definitely find editors there. If you're doing a one-off or something, Fiverr, you can find somebody to do a portrait edit. You can also find some decent. I found some decent real estate editors on there too. And then eventually just they were good. So I shot them an email and said, hey, do you want to work with me more consistently? Um,
Nice.
but then, of course, the more work you start to do, you're going to get emails with people reaching out to you saying, hey, do you need an editor? And that's
Mhm.
another way. And then
Yeah.
you've talked about this is smarter than I ever thought, but you've talked about this. I don't know why I never thought about it. You talked about Facebook groups, right?
Yeah, so Facebook groups is the way that I found my editors. Actually, one of them just messaged me and said, "Do you need editing?" And I looked at his stuff and I was like, "Yeah." So I have a Dropbox account and I have a Dropbox folder in there with practice images, just raw files. So I have 5 images that I have them test in this folder. So I have like a twilight shot, a kitchen that was difficult for me to edit. I have a
Mhm.
log cabin house, a bathroom with really bright lights to see how they'll handle the lights,
Yep.
and then like a water view on a cloudy day and see how they do the sky replacement. Because
Yeah.
I
And
want to test them on all those things because those are like areas that are difficult and will really test their skills as editors.
yeah.
So I'll send that folder and say, "Hey, will you do a test for me?" And I'll tell you, 98% of them fail. Not very many pass. So, and
Really?
I get now I just get the people in my inbox, my email, my Instagram, my Facebook Messenger, and they're like, "We do photo editing, blah blah blah. We do virtual staging, all this."
Yeah.
And sometimes, if I'm feeling like I might want to try a new one, I'll just have them do the test and
Yep.
we'll go from there. But yeah, I hate it when I get 35 cents an image. I'm like, okay, I
Mm.
am never going to hire anyone for 35 cents an image. I am not confident in that one bit. But I
Yeah.
would say it ranges from 35 cents up to average would be around $2 an image for outsourcing your editing.
Mm.
So it's not very expensive. I would say around the $1 range, 150 is where
Yeah.
like the main range is that I've seen. Like my shooters that have their own businesses, they get editors for that cost. And
It's something to think about too, though, when you're pricing your work. You don't want to price your work low to start when you're just solo either, because eventually you might want to do outsourcing, and now you're going to be making less money. But if you start out padding that in, the expectation that you're going to eventually outsource some of this work, then it's not going to be as big of a hit. You're going to have to raise your rates and surprise all your customers to account for that. So something to think about there too. The other thing I wanted to say about if you can find these teams that do the like you have now the 24-hour people that they can do it whenever because they've got a big bench, right? They've got multiple layers of
mhm.
editors. The plus side to that is also, yeah, you don't have to worry about they all went to bed, but also you don't have to worry about when I was doing the Online Jobs PH people, when I only had 2 editors, one of them got sick. Now I've got one editor and I've still got one editor and I've still got the same amount of work. It fell back on me again to pick up the slack to do the editing.
Mhm.
So it's good to have your bench be a little thicker than that so that those things
Yes.
aren't falling back on you again.
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea to have a backup editor in a different country or a different region
Yes.
because there's natural disasters. They have
Mhm.
sometimes their government, like through COVID, the government was shutting off the internet in certain countries,
Yep.
and that was scary to me when I heard they were shutting off the internet places. I'm like, "Oh no. Like
Yep.
this could be really bad if my editors get cut off." Like, I mean, I can't even communicate to figure out where they're at. Like I'm going to be scrambling. So I actually have an account with PhotoUp now, and I've used them a few times
Yep.
for some higher end jobs that I have and some portrait editing. And they do a decent job, but that's a company that I feel like would be reliable
Yeah.
through anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I have an account and I tried them out, but for how many files that I was providing and the way and the style, this is the other thing for editing. If you're doing flash ambient stuff, they don't all focus on flash ambient. A lot of them are really HDR focused. And the flash ambient, there's a lot less editors that do flash ambient well. But they charged for how many images I deliver, it wasn't going to be cost effective for me. It was going to
It's like
cost.
they have premium rates, don't they? Have like different levels of prices
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
HDRs, like $1, and
And their
then
pricing is
premium
confusing
goes
to
up from there.
understand. I had to have like 3
Yes.
conversations just to understand what it was going to cost me for my average shoot. And I realized it was going to be about half of the cost of my shoot. And that was too
Oh,
much
wow.
for me. So,
Yeah. I have one photographer friend in the area, and he pays $4 an image for editing, but
yeah, I would do that.
he's shooting high-end homes, like high-end, really high-end, like multi-million-dollar properties, and he's charging a good amount of money to cover that editing, but his editing is perfect. I
Mm.
mean, absolutely incredible.
Oh,
So
that's
it's
cool.
like, yeah, but I'm like, well, my pricing structure doesn't support that
No.
level of editing, but I feel like the editing that we have is great. And I send photos of his editing to my editors, and I'm like, edit like this.
Mm.
This is what I want him to look like. And he's gotten pretty darn close. He's done pretty
Well,
good.
yeah, I mean, and
Not on
maybe
all, but a lot
maybe
of them.
that's your in the future a new package, a new premium package, and you can
Yeah.
charge more for that shoot or something.
I could.
But whatever.
Then it's just like one more thing to add on to my order form, which is ridiculous. I had a client
Yeah.
just the other day. He's like, your online ordering you have way too much stuff on there. It's confusing. I have no time for this. Us realtors are busy. You need to narrow it down. Like, get rid of the packages or just offer 3 packages and that's it. And I'm like, well, there's
Oh.
people that just want photos, or people that just want to, like, I need a la carte and I need packages. I just added the packages. So I was like, thanks for the suggestion. And I've heard that from another client where I'm like, I don't know how to fix this problem. Anyways, that's a whole nother episode.
Oh,
So we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
get there.
No, that's
But-
well, yeah, we'll have to talk about that another time. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not adding more services, but anyways,
So-
okay.
All right, so we know
So-
where to find our editors. So once we've
Yes.
got our editors, all right, we found them from a Facebook group or whatever, we got our test images. Oh, and I wanted to say my test images, I also include a shot of my camera and tripod in a mirror, like in the bathroom where you've
Oh,
got no way
smart.
to avoid it.
Yeah.
Right? And so they have to do a removal. So I do a twilight, I do that, I do windows where my flash is reflecting. But yes, the dark ceiling, I don't have that yet in my gallery. I need to put that in there, but you're totally right about a log cabin is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so you've got they did their test. They're working with you now as far as maintaining the things that you got to look for, or the ways you can tell. Let's do this. You mentioned earlier how you can tell that they're not great editors, what to look for. Let's do that.
Okay. So one is color cast.
Yep.
One
Explain
is
color cast in case they don't understand it.
So the overhead ambient lights put off like a yellow tone, and that yellow tone bleeds onto the walls in photos, right?
Right.
So like what we see with our eyes adjust to it naturally when we're in a room, but the camera sees it a lot more yellow or
Right.
green, or like different lights put off a different color temperature, which then casts onto your
So
subject.
your ceiling might, if they didn't do a good job removing the yellows out of the ceiling is going to look yellow instead of white, like our eyes adjust and see white. But when we see the photo, it's going to be yellow. The other color cast issue can be with your flash bouncing off. Maybe they got a bright orange or a bright blue wall. Your flash is going to bounce around and pull some of that in the room. That could be another way you get your color cast.
Mhm.
So not correcting color cast. What else?
Highlights being blown out, so like lights in the house,
Yeah,
pendant lights being blown out. So this also, you
blooms.
have to shoot it right. I worked with one editor and he was like, we love your photos, you shoot so good. And he says you take plenty of ambient shots, like all the way down the spectrum of the exposure. You're getting it dark enough to where we can make the lights look perfect. So make sure your darkest exposure, those lights are exposed and you can actually see
Right.
the detail in the lights, and then they can do their job.
Right.
So as long as you're providing those images, they should be able to produce
Yeah.
a light that looks like it does when you're in the place, not all crazy blown out. So that's I'm a huge stickler for that. I hate
Mhm.
that. Like, that's a
Mhm.
dead giveaway.
Yeah.
And then another thing with the lights, sometimes there's like a black rim around the light that you can see. It's from the editing. It's like it's over processed or something. So you've got the light that looks exposed properly, but there will be a black line around it. So watch for that.
Yep.
Since we use a flash, it casts a shadow. So you want your editors to edit out those shadows. And I did just recently tested out a new editor, and she didn't, there was a shadow, but the shadow was like a yellow color. It wasn't a gray shadow color. It's like she masked it and I don't know what she did, but it looked really bizarre.
That
Like
can
there's
happen
like,
too. There's something that can happen in the method that they edit the photos where a lot of times they're doing your ambient exposure is going to be turned to a luminosity mode. And depending on the angle of the flash, when you switch that mode, the shadow will get this weird, like a color cast. It'll be very yellow. It could also
okay.
do some weird things on your cabinets. And if they don't know how to edit that correctly, it's going to look really bad. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
There's tricks
Um,
that you need to be a good editor to know those tricks, and I didn't know those for a long time till I found some videos that showed me how to fix that when I was doing for myself. But yeah, these are things that it's great when you hire somebody who's been a pro for a while that they already know those tricks.
yeah, yeah. And poor masking. So a lot of times they'll mask off the ceiling, like select just the ceiling and then desaturate it to take that color cast out. And sometimes they won't select part of the trim. Like half the trim piece gets selected, the other half doesn't. So half of it's like a brown color and half of it's white. So that's a dead giveaway.
I've had them
Um,
I've had them lately doing I think a desaturation because they know I want the ceilings to be white, and they'll
mhm,
do it across the whole room. So then
mhm.
the cabinets were cream and
Oh, that's the
now
worst.
they're
Yes.
white or vice versa. And I
Yes.
have to go, hey, look at my flash shot.
Yes.
Do you see the colors here? That's
Right.
not what you gave me. You got to fix that.
Yeah. Um, colors, making sure the colors are correct. There are, I don't know about in your town, but I've been seeing these a lot, blue cabinets in houses, and they're
Uh,
kind of like the blue behind you. If you're watching this on YouTube or pop on
mhm.
YouTube, see the blue color behind Neil. It's like this dark, kind of muted blue. It's
Yep.
beautiful, but that's the color of the cabinets. And for
Mhm.
some reason, when they edit them, they come out this almost turquoise blue. I'm like, this is not even
Uh,
close, people. I had two editors that I sent these files to because one, I'm like, my editor occasionally just totally shits the bed. And I'm like, what happened? Did you give me a new editor? Definitely. I'm like, come on, man.
yeah.
Anyway, so I sent those files, just those kitchen files, to a new editor to see what he did. He did the same thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I don't know what it is with these blue cabinets,
I
but
think I'm not sure, but
color
I
test.
think sometimes what they do, I think they have some cheats, some presets that
Mm,
they'll do when they're
okay.
trying, maybe they're in a rush or whatever, and
Hmm.
they'll kind of edit them in a cheap HDR way where the colors get messy. And
Okay.
they'll do things if you pull the shadows up, if you pulled the shadows up on this exposure to try and make everything look bright and airy,
Hmm.
you're gonna start affecting the color of this wall. It's not gonna
Right.
look that way, and it's gonna start looking this way. Yeah.
Right.
So I think they do some stuff like that's why HDR can look really crappy because everything looks fake. It's all no shadows
Overdone.
and yeah,
Yeah.
it's too much of everything. And I
Yeah.
think that's what they do. They're like hit auto in a few of these to get caught up, you know?
Gotcha. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes sense.
They're
Yeah.
taking some shortcuts, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so you wanna also look at the window poles and what it looks like outside. So we have a lot of green trees around here, and I wanna see those green trees bright and saturated and deep and contrasty. Like, I don't want them to look kinda hazy and blown out. I want it to look really clear. Like, I can see out the windows very clearly, and I can see that greenery, and it looks enticing, right? I'm like, "Wow, look at that view out there."
Mm.
So that's something to look for. And then this you can request or ask when you hire these editors, do you replace the sky on the interior photos as well or just the exterior?
And
So
I
I
didn't even know
started
that was a thing
it's a
until like
thing.
6
Yeah.
months ago when they
Yeah.
started doing it, and I was like, "Whoa, look, they put blue out the window. That's
It's so
nice."
sunny. Yeah. Yeah. So mine do that. They've been doing that for years and I love it. Like if they don't do that, I'm not hiring them. That's a
Mm.
deal breaker for me. So, and then also look at the sky replacement and make sure that it's done well. And this also goes
Yeah.
back on the shooter as well, because you got to shoot it properly and get it dark enough so that you're exposing for all of the, in the fall, there's a bunch of twigs and sticks sticking up, up into the sky. And so you need to expose for all of those little sticks so that you can see them in your darkest exposure shot so that they can, when they lay that sky over,
Oh,
it'll go around the twigs. It doesn't cut the twigs off and make it look like the tree's half gone. Right.
yeah. Oh,
And
and
you'll see it
another
with power
another
lines
thing we
too.
should clarify is I'm sure you do the same too, but we're delivering raw files as well.
Oh, yeah. Mhm. I've
Right?
had editors tell me, "You can send JPEGs." I'm like,
No.
"I don't think I wanna do that." No, not doing that.
If I
That
were
would be nice.
sending JPEG, I would want to make sure I only send 3, sometimes 2 exposures, but I send 3. But if I was doing JPEG, then yeah, I'd want
That's
5.
it?
I'd probably want 5. My raw file, you can do so much with my raw file. I had an editor one time say, "Well, you were given more exposures before, so I don't know how it can do that adjustment." And I gave her an example. I said, okay, go in a Lightroom, do a duplicate. What is it? It's a duplicate of that photo. And you can pull the exposure up and you can pull the exposure down like you had 3 polar opposite exposures with my raw files. They're really great. You can have pitch
Right.
black in that room, or you could have way too bright in that room from my medium exposure. So
Mm.
I just do a exposure at 0 compensation for my room.
Mhm.
And then I do an exposure for the brightest things in the room, the windows, the lights, whatever it is that I need to make sure I have the details, like you're saying, that you could see the details
Mhm.
outside. I'm exposing for that window if that's the brightest thing in the room, so that it's going to look the way I want it to if they if they whatever when they edit it. And then, or maybe it's a really bright light in the room, like you're saying, it has a huge bloom on the ceiling and everything. I'm exposing for that so I can see all the detail in that light. And then I'm doing a flash. I'm taking that same exposure and I'm adding flash to it.
I
But
do
yeah,
like
if
a
they don't
full.
know that, then yeah, they might not do a good job with my files if they're not taking advantage
Yeah.
of my raw files. So your editors probably love you because they just blend all 4 of them together, but they have the same tools there. But if they don't know how to use it, then yeah, they're probably not going to do a good job.
Right. I provide a full range of bracketed shots, like 3 to 7, and
Yeah.
then a flash shot also exposed for the
Do you
windows
have
and
an
proper
auto?
flash.
Do you have an auto bracket button?
No. No, and everyone's always like, "You don't use that?" I'm like, "No, because I want full control over my lowest exposure." If I did the auto bracket, then I'd have to go through and look at the images I just took
Hmm.
and be like, "Is it dark enough?" And for me, it's like it's so fast. I'm like sharpshooter, like get out my guns, like poof, 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 done. Like it's so fast. I just roll it out, click, roll it out, click, roll it out, click.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I've always done
You
it.
got it
But
down. You
yeah,
got it down.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
totally.
you can set it to 5, but what if that's not dark enough? Like 5 exposures. What if that's still not dark enough? And then you
Yeah.
have to look at them and go back, shoot another one. I don't know.
Yeah, I
It
don't
just works
shoot
for
auto
me.
like that either. Yeah, I'm just spinning my wheel until I see the exposure
Okay.
I want. I do aperture priority for my neutral ambient shot. Then I do manual mode for the exposure for the windows or the lights or whatever the bright things are in the room. And then
Hmm,
I add the flash. And I add the flash manually. I don't do TTL or anything.
interesting. Why do you do aperture priority?
It's dead easy.
Oh.
That's the only reason.
Another thing that I look for is in the sky replacement on the exterior shots, they will mask off the sky and then drop it in. Sometimes the masking isn't done right and the sky will bleed onto anything that is light in color. So if there's like white trim on the peak of the house, sometimes that white trim will look blue.
Oh yeah.
So that's something else to look for. The sky replacement also, if it's a cloudy day, you'll want them to replace the sky, but do a gradient from like cloudy on the bottom of the horizon up to a blue sky, which makes it look more natural. Also on the horizon, a lot of times like where the sky replaces, like if there's water and like mountains and then the sky is replaced, sometimes it can look really different colors. Like an obvious sky replacement, you can see kind of like a line along the horizon
Yeah.
where they replaced it. So that's a big red flag there. The oversaturation is another thing that I struggle with every day with my editor. He oversaturates the floor or the
Mm,
countertops or the walls even sometimes. Gotta watch
yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
But
Colors are tricky. A lot of times. Yeah, I've seen them do stuff also sometimes on their window pulls, on the frames, or even shades on the window. I think they're trying to get away with the fast route, in which case they're darkening the whole frame around the window and stuff, doing
mm,
some weird stuff. I don't know what they're doing exactly, but I have to go, no, that's not right. What are you
yeah.
doing? Look at this other exposure. It doesn't look like that. So there are some
Yes.
things like that. Now, on
Yeah.
those things, when you see those things, are
Mhm.
you, nope, these people are no good, or is it just a pointer you have to point out to them to make sure they do it correctly?
Depends on how many errors. If it's just the one,
Mm.
I can send it back and say, "Hey, can you fix this? Let's see how they react when I ask them to fix it, and if they actually do and they fix it well." And then you can say, "Going forward, please make sure it looks like this." So you got to kind of train them. None of them are perfect when you get them. That's one thing that I've learned. Like I've had to work with my editor quite a bit to get it to look how I want it to look. And
Mm.
I'm dead honest, blunt. I mean, I'm on a group thread on Facebook with my editor, with all my shooters. And sometimes I'll just call them out and tell them exactly how it is. And they're like texting me on the side going, "Damn, Rachel." I'm like, "What? I got to be honest with him and tell him and call
What,
him out
like
on
what?
these
What's an
things." Like,
example? What's an example?
there was one recently, he totally bombed the cabinet color. And he said, "I see another job in the file," because we have like a shared Dropbox folder where every job goes in. So he can see that.
Yeah.
And he said, "There's another job in here. Do you want me to edit this one?" And I said, "No, we're testing out a new editor today."
Oh,
And to me, and like that sounds really rude, but it's my strategy to entice him, like let him know we are not happy with what you're doing. And I have
Mm,
already messaged him on the side, and after that comment, I message him on the side and say, "Hey, what's going on? Why is our editing inconsistent? I've seen a lot of errors lately." And then he communicates to me and tells me, your jobs are coming in too late and we don't have enough time to produce the high quality images that you
mm.
require. And I'm like, okay, well, how about if we don't get them up by 10 p.m., we'll send them to our backup editor. And he's like, perfect. So that's been our resolution with that. But me just telling him like we're trying someone else out just kind of kicks his butt a little bit and says, uh-oh, you
Little
know,
reality check, yeah.
yeah, like she's trying. That's not good. We don't want to lose her,
Yeah,
and then hopefully he'll try harder for me. I
yeah,
guess I could be nicer about it, but I'm just like blunt. Or if
yeah.
something's really bad, I'll be like, this sky replacement looks terrible.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not mean, but I will just say straight up, this kitchen edit looks really bad. This looks
Mm.
fake. You need to fix it. So,
Yeah, and that is probably the biggest thing is when things start to look fake. They just don't look they should look still natural. It shouldn't look
yeah.
you shouldn't look at it and go, "Wow, good editing."
Well, you don't want to, you can look at one and be like, that's photoshopped. Like, you don't ever want to say that when you see a photo. So if
Yeah,
I
you
see
wanna
it and
say
I'm like,
nice
that looks
photo.
photoshopped.
Not a nice photo,
Yeah.
not nice Photoshop.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
Photoshop. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Cool.
a couple other things to look for with an editor, you want to make sure they have good communication skills. So, a lot of these editors, obviously, English is a second language. So, make sure when you're texting them back and forth or messaging, however you're communicating, that they can really understand what you're trying to tell them. Because I've had some that don't understand a lick of English, and it's so
Uh,
frustrating. You're like, you have no idea what I'm trying to communicate to you. This is not going to work out. I need someone that knows English relatively well that can have a conversation with me. And I'll ask them questions. How big is your team? How long have you been doing this? Like, and they'll respond. I'll say, what kind of things are you into? And then they can respond, and I can kind of tell how good they are with their
uh,
English too by
yeah.
asking those questions, trying to get to know them a little
Yeah, that's
better.
smart. You also wanna, find out about some of those extra editing things if they do them or not and what they cost and stuff too, right?
Yes, yes. So a lot of these editors will do, included will be your sky replacement. That should not be an additional charge. Adding fire to the fireplace and fire to the fire pits should not be an additional charge. A screen on the TV, like some people do it. I don't prefer that, but some editors will do that. So you can ask them if
Mm.
they will. No, I had one editor that it was a house out in Cle Elum, which is like I think I don't know, it's a cute little town in the middle of the woods, and it's a bunch of log cabins and they're beautiful, and he put a picture of a tropical scene, like a Tahiti or something on the screen. I'm
Right.
like, this is like a snow town. Like, what is that? That is not.
Yeah.
I'm like, take that off, turn it black. So,
And
anyways, but they
that's one of
will.
those tricky things artistically that can be hard too, that another reason to
Yeah.
avoid some stuff like that because it's really hard to get what you would expect, what you have in your brain that might not be at
Right.
all what they have. Yeah.
Exactly. But they will, like, if there's a theater room in a house and you need a scene put
Yeah.
on the TV, I have a couple saved in my little folder that I'll send to them. Like, one of my main go-tos is Iron Man, so it's a scene from Iron Man. So a couple things that you can ask about, because it will probably be an additional charge, would be removing items like junk removal out of an image. So some of these editors can take a completely cluttered living room and
Mm.
empty it out and make it look empty for you. It's not cheap. I charge 35 an image for junk removal. And they charge anywhere. It depends on how hard it's going to be for them, but it can be up to $25 an image for them to do that. So,
State.
green
Oh, yeah.
grass replacement is an additional charge as well. So
And
if the client
staging
wants
too.
that, oh yeah, virtual staging. Yep, a lot of them can do that. I would ask, when you get virtual staging from companies overseas, they have a catalog of the
Mm.
furniture that they choose from. So you can ask them, can I see the catalog, please? Can you send me a Dropbox folder with all of the furniture? And then you can handpick the furniture that you want in each room. Because what I found when I would give it to them and say, virtually stage this living room, they'd put furniture in there that looked like it was from India. I'm like, this furniture would never be in a house in Seattle. This looks
Oh,
terrible.
good
It's
point.
obvious that it's virtually staged, but they have a lot of modern, we have a lot of like modern farmhouses around here, right? So that's a really popular style. And they have a lot of that modern farmhouse furniture. They have some good contemporary stuff. So I
Yeah.
just like being able to hand pick it. And I also tell my clients that I say, our virtual staging looks legit, and I hand pick all the furniture that goes in so it looks
Mm.
consistent with the style of the home. So
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really smart. Yeah, I had a client reach out to me last year and they have somebody that does the virtual staging for them and they've worked with them a while, but they're were asking me, is this something you can do? Because you have a good taste. And that's the only thing they run into sometimes is the problem with them picking the wrong stuff. It just
Yeah.
doesn't go with the decor. And so that's great that that's real smart. So I have somebody who
Yeah.
just asked me recently if I could do some staging. So I'm going to ask them who I'm using to do that. Then I'll check, see what the furniture looks like and see if I can pick it. That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And when my clients ask about, or if I bring up the virtual staging, I always am honest. I'm like, honestly, it's best if you can stage the home because when people see the photos online, then they come in the house, it's kind of
Mm,
a disconnect there.
yeah.
But how many times do they walk through the house? Maybe once. How many times are they online looking at those photos? Like average is like 50 times or something. It's crazy high. How many
Yeah.
times that homeowner that's really interested in that house will look at the photos. So it at least gives them an idea of what their furniture would look like in the space. And that's how I sell it to my clients and tell them. So I say stage it if you
Yeah.
can, like definitely. But if your homeowner won't stage it and you want to go above and beyond for your clients, offer them virtual staging. We just had a listing that closed a couple days ago, and we did that because the homeowner said, nope, we're not going to stage it. And we don't provide that as a service. And so I said, let's just virtually stage it. It's perfect. And nobody even knows. Like they were shocked when they saw it. They're like,
Oh
this
yeah.
looks so good. No, it's cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
Something
and
cool
then
to
the
add
other
on.
thing, I know one of our clients that they still outsource to that same company, but a lot of times it's not the whole house. Even there might be just one room that just isn't up to par with the rest of the house. So great, they strip it and
Hmm.
virtually stage that one room, so at least you can envision it and they can show it off still. Whereas the other option would be they wouldn't even show it.
Right.
In the
Yeah.
so
So floor plans are also something that a lot of these editors can do for you, but I would caution you with these floor plans. So the way I used to do it, I do a Matterport tour. Matterport offers floor plans, but they used to not offer floor plans if you used the Z1 camera.
hmm,
You'd have to use the Pro 2 to generate the floor plans.
yeah,
Now that's changed. You can get floor plans off Matterport. Do that because it's way more accurate than these outsourced editors. But one thing cool about these editors is they can do a 3D floor plan. So if you order floor plans from Matterport or Kubicasa or whatever platform you use, you can send that floor plan to them and they can create a 3D drawing that it looks like the walls are up and you can see they'll put furniture in the house.
hmm,
It's really cool. It's like it brings it to life. Sometimes they do it in color. You can do it in black and white. So I don't offer this to my clients yet. It might be something I add on, but
oh,
it's definitely something kind of different that not a lot of people are doing.
cool. But currently, right now, you're doing the floor plans from your Z1 camera with through
Mhm.
Matterport, right?
Yes, but before Matterport did the Z1 cameras, I was sending it out to my editor. I'd send them the Matterport tour, and then they would generate a floor plan from that, and they would calculate the square footage, and it was way off. I had probably 5 clients call me and be like, "Wow, the square footage is off by like 200 square feet, 300 square feet.
Mm,
Is this accurate?" And I was like, "I think so." I go,
mm,
"They say they're like 95%." And I'm like, this is bad business. Like, I don't feel good about this. So I
mhm.
ended up just stopping. I was like, let's just figure out a different way to do this. And that's when I found Kubicasa
Yeah,
and started using that platform, which was great. And it's
yeah,
so fast. Kubicasa is
yeah.
awesome. So I
Kubicasa
wouldn't
is good.
don't outsource it with Matterport. It's not accurate enough, in my opinion.
I think just be aware of your pain points is going to be your first indicator when you start to feel that pain from doing your own editing or you're not getting enough sleep. Start to think about solving some of these problems. I always go, but when something's in my head bothering me, stop, think about it. Why is this bothering? Is this something you want to continue to do, or maybe this is something you need to outsource? Because it's not just editing too, right? You could outsource a lot of things. The next thing I'm going to try to hand off to somebody else is the managing of my stuff going out in the morning before I go to shoots or midday before I go to shoots. I got to get somebody else managing that because that's the new thing that I'm just, this is stressing me out. So yeah, when you get to that point, there are solutions and don't be
Yes.
afraid because all the big photographers in your area are doing it too,
Hmm.
right?
Yep. And have a business mindset. I mean, you are running and managing a business and you need to
Right.
think like a business. Look at the numbers, evaluate how much your time is worth and how much time you're spending editing, and then see how much an editor would cost you. If it's $1 an image, you deliver 35 images, that's $35. If it takes you 3 hours to do it, are you worth, $12 an hour?
Right.
Or what's your time worth? So that's
Yeah.
another way to look at it too. And just be honest and transparent with people and explain the benefits of it. And people get it. All of my clients are thrilled. I lied. I have one client who called me. This was so bizarre to me. I still don't understand this, but whatever. He called me, said, "Hey, I really like your photos and your videos, but I'm only going to use you for video work because I want a photographer that takes the photos and edits them themselves. And it was an email. So I emailed back and I said, not a problem at all. Whatever you need, no big
Mhm.
deal. I would love to still do all your videos for you. And he hasn't used me since. He posted on his Instagram and I saw the photo and I was like, yep, that is someone editing. It's not an editing company because it didn't look great. It looked okay, but it
Mhm.
didn't look as good a quality as what I deliver. And so that to me just was like,
Yeah.
he'll learn.
Yeah.
I hope he does. Or if not, whatever works for you, right? Like
Yeah.
I can't control other people.
Right.
So just
Can't
do
control
what you
other
want to do.
people. And at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it doesn't make sense for you to continue trying to do it yourself. It's a business.
No,
It's a business decision. And if you
exactly.
want to continue to grow in a certain direction, you got to start paying attention to what things are going to make sense for the long run as well. So if you think
Mhm.
you're heading in a growth direction, start thinking about what things might be pain points down the line too, not just right now, and start working on and gearing towards them. If you need to start raising your rates a little bit to get there to afford export, outsourcing, then start thinking about that, head in that direction.
Yeah, definitely. And the average business raises their prices every year, like 3 to 5%. So keep that in mind too. You should be doing a price raise every year.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
All right,
Awesome.
guys. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
And until next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.